as you would have heard me opine prior to that, there are a variety of, I guess, folk from the environmental activist phase at the moment who have been, ironic in the wake of the resignation of Greenco leader yesterday, or not as impending resignation anyhow, who see New Zealand farmers and New Zealand farming as prime enemy number one. And it was something that there was a pushback, as we know, from a variety of folk and a variety of organisations over the last 3 years. And that pushback was part of the impetus that led to a change of government in October of last year. But change of government or not, things are not so good down on the farm. We're joined by Toby Williams, the chair of the Meat and Wool section of Federated Farmers, and he joins us now. Toby, welcome to the show. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. Happy New Year.
Where do you come from, mate? What part of the country?
I'm on the east coast, so just north of Gisborne, between Tolaga Bay and Gisborne City, about halfway, roughly. Whangara, a little part of paradise.
Oh, God, wasn't paradise this time a year ago, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't paradise this time a year ago, but, storms, it's still an incredible place to live. Storms, withheld from all of that. It's been on the east coast, it's been a challenging 3 years, not just last year. It's been compounded by, 3 years of very wet weather. So, but we're putting our boots back on again and putting things back together.
Are you a year on, and it was, as you say, very wet even before Cyclone Gabriel, and you had lots of issues there. A year on, are you seeing, has the weather become a bit drier? Is there an improvement in the rural mood?
Well, not really. I mean, there is an improvement, yes. We've had a better summer this year. We've had some hot, dry weather, but we've still got a lot of rain. We had another 20 mils overnight last night. I think we're up to about 180, 190 for the month on our property. So it's still incredibly wet. That's probably double our average January rainfall. We had a dry period in August, and everybody got a bit excited about getting out there and doing some more work. But it has been very wet since. But grass is growing, animals are looking really good, and we're able to get out on farm and do the repairs that are required, which we haven't been able to do for the last, for the last year. Since the storms hit, we've had very little opportunity to repair things. So in that respect, it's pretty good.
You're also a very interesting area. I was just thinking of the East Coast because there's been a strong integration of Maori and Pākehā in the East Coast, I guess, for over 150 years. The community is very interwoven, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And they're probably, at this stage, they're probably less than they have ever been, as we have more forestry conversions go in. It's driven a lot of people off the land.
Yeah.
But that's been for the last, it's not just recently, it's been for the last 30 years. So we've seen the community become a little bit more fractured, but there still is a big integration. I mean, over half of our population on the East Coast is Māori. So if you haven't got any integration, then, you've got no staff. You've got to sort of work more closely. And we're a little bit different to every other region because of our high Māori population.
Yeah.
And, like you said, our family's been on the East Coast here for almost 200, 170, 180 years in various forms. So we've had a long history with Māori farming and Māori people, and you got to find a way to work together. We're all one people in the end.
I had a Ngāti Porou girlfriend once, I've got to be honest with you, and she always used to say, well, there's Maori and there's Ngāti Porou. There is a different cultural milieu there, though, isn't there, because of that Ngāti Porou background?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, it's put a bit outside of my expertise, but certainly there is. I mean, Māori are very tribal, and depending on different parts of the country you go to, you get different receptions. And I was up in Northland for a family reunion in April last year, and Ngāpuhi invited us into Tiki Marae and things like that, and we had a really unique experience up there with them, celebrating 200 years together, of our family and them and the history that we've had. And the East Coast, it depends, I think down here we've got a good relationship. It's been built off, 150 years of farming with them, and trying to do things a little bit differently. But again, we've sort of continued to improve, and that goes back to a little bit what you were saying before. The direction of travel the previous government wanted to go on was, I don't think we had too many issues with that. It was the pace of change that they were going at, and how it wasn't. Some of the legislation was ill-considered about the secondary effects of it.
Mm. Okay, now you're meat and wool, so you're traditional Kiwi farming in lots of ways. The reason I've asked you on, Toby, is because I became aware over the Christmas break, talking to some meat and wool dairy farmers and friends of mine, things are pretty tough. The two things they put to me is there's no money in wool. There still money in merino, which we've got a fair bit of in our high country down here, but there's no money in real wool, and it's costing them money just to take basically the wool off the sheep's back. And two, sheep meat prices and beef prices are pretty average too. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, no, it's 100% correct. Wool's a real challenge. For strong wool guys, merino, we can separate the merino fine wool guys out, but they're only small. I think they're only about 10% of our nation's wool clip. That finer wool. So we predominantly have that strong wool, which has typically been into manufactured carpets and upholstery and things like that. And it is a real challenge. I think shearing's probably costing me 50%. I get about a return of 50% on my wool check for shearing costs, so it's costing me. I spend probably $60,000 a year shearing, and I get about $30,000 if I'm lucky for my wool. There is a lot of happening in this space. There's some groups that are working pretty closely trying to drive it up. And we're actually got a meeting in April down in Christchurch with a whole lot of these wool industry guys trying to, how do we bring ourselves back together? How do we have one voice? At the moment, it's probably a little bit siloed still. And wool's one of those products really that is in the modern, and if we listen to what everybody wants, they want to get rid of plastics. They want biodegradable. They want things that are safe for the environment. Well, wool ticks all those boxes 1,000 times over. It's an incredible product. But we need to do a better job of marketing it and a better job of developing products that the consumer doesn't know they need yet.
But it doesn't help with the Ministry of Education plastic wool floor coverings instead of wool coverings in their new schools, does it?
No, the lack of support from the previous government, even though we had a very good, Damien O'Connor was great, he was a great wool supporter, but the rest of his contemporaries weren't so much, especially the bureaucrats. They looked at it purely from an economic perspective as opposed to, adding the environmental side of things in. And part of the issue with that is actually how they calculate the environmental impact of nylon carpets versus wool. The nylon manufacturers back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, when they were negotiating these contracts, said, look, we will calculate our environmental footprint from when the nylon lands in our factory to produce the carpet. But when you produce wool, you've got to count it from the day that sheep's born. You've got to include it from there. So we're not comparing like with like. We've got to suck oil out of the ground and ship it around the world to make nylon. That's a bit of a reality with that. So it is, and so wool's been like this for a number of years now. And it is showing that there's light at the end of that tunnel. Now maybe it's a pinprick of light at the moment, but the good news is it's there and we can see it. And it's just a matter of how fast can we get to it. Is
it an option not to shear because if you're losing money to shear, or do you have to?
No, you have to. So we're shearing for an animal welfare reasons. If we didn't shear, the sheep are, they've got big heavy coats on them. In the summer especially, they can get heat stress and fly strike. We shear twice a year on our property, and most farmers these days do now, shear twice a year purely for an animal welfare perspective. But you do get an increased production out of your sheep from it. They're happier, they cost you less in terms of animal welfare concerns. So you do it for the sheep's benefit. And you can go to breeds that don't have, that are shedding sheep. I've got a few concerns around, when you look at the overall economic impact, economic viability of that, I still think shearing my sheep twice a year and producing the lambs I produce out of my ewes is still better than going towards these shedding sheep. We get a better product of, and when wool comes back, I'm actually going to be making a lot of money out of those sheep, and those shedding guys have only got the carcasses of their the progeny and of the ewes.
Yeah. So you're saying this is cyclical. You're at the end or the bottom of the cycle at the moment. You're expecting it to rebound.
Yeah, I think we are. We need to do a better job of pulling ourselves together as an industry, and so we're taking a lead role in that, trying to get everybody together. There's some great people.
Wasn't there a New Zealand Wool Board though? I seem to remember.
Yeah, there was, and so that got about 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, the Wool Board got voted down. And what that was a frustration of farmers of, the wool's been languishing for a long time. There was a frustration from farmers that the people leading the wool board weren't doing an adequate job, and so they got sick of paying for it for people with no perceived benefits. So it was got rid of, and there's some residual funds still sitting in the background if something ever happens and somebody can sort of pull them together. And we've had individual groups, and Wool Impacts is the latest iteration, who are trying to drive this resurgence, and get people inspired.
Was the wool board too Wellington-fied, was it?
No, I think it was, this is a personal opinion, Federated Farmers opinion, I suppose it's all the same, but what we found is the leadership, you only know what you know, you don't know is what you don't know. And I think we had guys who were incredibly experienced within the wool industry, they've done it their whole lives, but society moves really quickly. And we saw that with synthetic carpets becoming favoured over woolen carpets. And what the synthetic guys did is they marketed better. They drove, a marketing campaign and paid flooring guys to sell their carpet, whereas the wool guys went, well, we've got an incredible product, it should sell itself. And we did a poor job of actually selling it and keeping people interested in it. That's turning around now. We are seeing it start to turn around, but it's still a bit of water to go under this bridge. But hopefully within the next 18 months, 2 years, we've turned it back around. We've got sort of $5 a kilo for our strong wool, and we're actually making money as a sheep, from our wool as a sheep farmer.
Toby, sheep meat prices though, lamb obviously is where you make some money. What's the price been like, and what's the market like at the moment?
Yeah, the market's really challenging. There's a few factors at play. China are a dominant market for buying, for supporting sheep meat prices. Obviously, they've sort of caught a cold, and the whole economy's gone a bit cold, and you're not buying as much. Lamb and sheep meat are a premium product, so they sit in the upper echelons. You'll choose to purchase when you've got income, you can expendable income, over above what you need to live. You can go to those higher value products. So they're buying a bit less. We had the drought on the eastern seaboard of Australia. And what that caused them to do is they culled a lot more sheep, and that sheep meat's gone into the market and pushed the prices down. It's been over the last 2 years we've sort of seen this. So I think right about now we're getting about half of what we got for lambs 2 years ago in terms of our meat prices, and we're getting about almost a third, maybe 40% for our ewes. So we've ewes worth around about $60 to $70 now. They were worth around about $170, $180 a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And lamb's carcass price now are about $110 for a 20 kilo lamb, maybe $120 depending on your company. And 2 years ago we were looking at close to $200 for the same sheep. So we've seen a steep drop off on that. And at the same time, we've also seen our farm input prices increase dramatically. Like everybody's seen at the supermarket, our input costs have gone up quite significantly.
Yeah.
So we've had a contraction of our income, but also an expansion of our costs.